When I first started studying for the MCAT, I was absolutely lost. I had no idea what to do or where to even start. I remember there were some weeks where I would only read a few chapters of Kaplan, and that's all I would do that week. And on top of that, I was taking a histology course that was way more difficult than I expected, and I found myself way in over my head when it came to studying that semester. I'm making this video today, so hopefully you guys avoid the same mistakes that I did, and you can score over a 515 on the MCAT like I did. For full disclaimer, I'm currently a second year medical student. I took the MCAT 3 years ago, and my score on the exam was a 519. I had 130 on chemistry/physics, 131 on cars, 128 on biochem, and 130 on psych/soc. I went from being a clueless pre-med with no idea where to even start studying to getting a top 4% quartile, top 96th percentile score on the exam, which is top 4%. This video is going to help you to help take you through the steps that I took to get to that point so you can be a top 5% scorer too. So I'm first going to start off with cars, as this is the section I actually saw the most improvement in. I remember the very first practice test I took, I got like a 122 on cars, which is like below average. On my real deal, it was 131. I remember I dreaded having to do cars articles every day. It was always soul crushing to see 1 out of 6 correct when I was doing these practice articles. So, my advice for cars is that you need to do as much volume as possible to see the biggest improvements. Cars is in the section where you can do content review and memorize a ton of information for it in the span of a few days or weeks, like other sections are. In order to do better in cars, you simply have to do more and more problems. That is the only way to improve at it. What this looks like practically is that you should do 2 cars articles every single day. And when I say every day, I do mean every single day. You should not skip a single day of doing cars because cars is not something you could cram. If you wanted to cram for something like Psych Soc, it's not something I would really recommend, but I could see where you are coming from if you did decide to do that, since Psych Soc and other sections involve a ton of memorization that could be crammed. But cars is simply not crammable. It has to be done every single day. Just block off 10 to 20 minutes of your day and do 2 cars articles every day. The resource I recommend using for this is called Jack Weston. He has a website where you can do a new cars article every single day. Do the one for that day and then go and find another past cars article and do that one as well. I will link Weston's website in the description for you to get started today. Keep in mind your scores at the start will be very low. Everyone's starting scores in cars are low. You'll get 1 out of 6 or 2 out of 6, maybe a 1 out of 7. It's just something you have to grind through in the early stages. Eventually, you'll start seeing 5 out of 7 or 6 out of 7 in cars on each passage, and this is where you want to be. But it takes months and months of work to get there. If you have the time, i.e., more than 1 month before your exam, I would also recommend an additional resource. It's called the 30 Days Cars Bootcamp. I will have it linked in the description. It tells you how to approach articles, and you do one of these, you read like one of these articles like every single day. It tells you what to do and what to look out for, and how you should like approach the questions and like the things you should look out for in the article, like how you should highlight and what you should see in the questions before you start reading the article. I saw a score improvement from following this document, so it's worth following as well if you're struggling with cars. We'll also add that Jack Weston has other articles such as biology and Chem Phys, but I never used those and I still scored high on those sections without those, so I don't think they're necessarily worth using. Biology and Chem Phys benefit more from other study techniques that don't involve spamming as many questions as possible, like with cars. So this is a nice transition point to start talking about these 2 sections. I lumped them together because the study techniques I used for both the Chem Phys section and the biology biochem section were almost exactly the same. So the first thing I would do is start off with a content review of these areas using the Kaplan textbooks. So for example, I would spend about a week going through the biology Kaplan textbook. I try to read at least 1 chapter per day, sometimes more if I had the time. You want to start off slow because MCAT is a big grind. So doing 1 chapter a day was very manageable for me. Once I finished a chapter, I would go into Anki and unsuspend the cards associated with that chapter. If you are starting off on your MCAT journey, I believe this is the best approach to have towards content review. You should ideally do a small amount of it every day so you can learn the information first and then use Anki to retain what you just learned. The Anki deck I used to study for the MCAT was called the Miles Down deck, but there has been a new Anki deck released recently from Anking specifically for the MCAT. It combines multiple decks into one and it seems very high quality from what I've seen. The only catch is that it's paid, but you can pay the $6 per month fee and then cancel the subscription and get to keep the deck, which is what I do with the Step 1 deck. I think it's well worth it for all the advantages you get from it. Just read a chapter from Kaplan, then go under the Kaplan tags to find that chapter in Anking, unsuspend those cards, and then keep up with Anki every day so you can consistently retain the information that you are learning. I will have the Anking MCAT deck linked in the description as well. So when you are done with all the content review for Chem, Phys, and Biochem, this is when I recommend that you start doing practice problems. The best resource for practice problems that I have found is UWorld. I spent approximately 6 months studying for the MCAT, and I started doing UWorld around 2 or 3 months before my exam. You definitely don't want to wait until the last minute to start doing practice problems. Start doing UWorld practice problems as soon as you are done with content review. You will learn so much from the detailed UWorld explanations, and if you get a question wrong, you can add those cards to your Anki using the Find Anki cards from UWorld add-on, so you are constantly polishing your knowledge base. The final section I will talk about is Psych Soc, which is a little different from all the other sections that I've mentioned so far. So first of all, I didn't use any textbooks for Psych Soc. I knew that Kaplan did have a textbook for Psych Soc, but I didn't use it. There's a better resource out there online for Psych where people took notes over the Khan Academy Psych videos and then uploaded an entire 100-page document online for all of us to use. This is what I used for content review when it came to Psych. You want to download this document and try to read at least a little bit of it every day. So for example, if you read 5 pages every day, you will finish reading the entire document in 20 days, which really isn't that much time. And I started doing the Anki for it as soon as I was done with the document. I put this section as the last section in my video because I believe this is the section in the MCAT that is the most easily crammable. If you are short on time, then I think you should focus on Chem, Phys, Bio, and Cars for now because those sections, they require a deep level of understanding to get questions right on them. For Psych Soc, it often just tests whether you know it or not. Like, do you know what the Hawthorne effect is or do you not know that? A lot of the section is just brute memorization, so you could say reviewing this section for last if you only have a few weeks left to prepare for the MCAT. Since this section is so heavy on brute memorization, Anki becomes very good at it, as this is the exact use case that Anki is best designed for. After you're done going over the document and you've been keeping up with your Anki for it, I recommend that you start doing UWorld practice problems for Psych Soc as well, on top of the Chem and Bio that you're already doing. Now I'm going to start talking about some miscellaneous tips I have for preparing for the exam. One thing that really helped me was having people to keep me accountable on this process. I had a friend from college that set up a Discord group for pre-med studying for the MCAT, and we all posted there every single day to talk about our goals and to keep ourselves accountable. I found this to be very helpful because I knew I would be asked about what I decided to do today from the other members in the group. So I knew I had to be productive that day, otherwise I would be scrutinized by everyone else. If you also want to be held accountable for studying during this period, I have a community set up exactly for this purpose. It also has courses on learning, motivation, retention, and how to approach practice problems, and it offers one-on-one tutoring with me every 2 weeks if you need additional help beyond that. Click the top link in the description if this is something you're interested in. The next thing I'll mention is that you should ideally be doing full-length practice exams throughout your entire study period. For example, I gave myself 6 months to study for the MCAT, and I took a full-length practice exam from Kaplan around the 1 month mark. This is just to see where I was at and to see where my weaknesses and strengths were and what I needed to concentrate on and try to improve. From this full-length exam, I saw that Psych Soc was already higher than most of my sections, despite me never starting content review for it. I had a very good psychology professor, so I felt comfortable knowing that this is a section I could deprioritize while I focus on other sections. If you find, for example, that your Chem Phys is strong on your first full-length exam, you could choose to deprioritize that section or any other section that you did like very strongly in. That doesn't mean you don't study it at all. You just focus more on other sections for now. I took my other full length exams as I got closer to my exam date. I took one after I started doing U World, and then I took 3 or 4 in my final month of studying. The final practice exams I took were all from AAMC as I wanted to be best prepared for the types of questions that AAMC likes to ask. Speaking of the final month of studying, this is where you want to transition away from doing U World. At this point, I would recommend only doing AAMC material and Jack Weston. This is to get you used to the types of questions that AAMC likes to ask in the final stretch of your studying. Jack Weston is something I would recommend you keep doing because more and more volume is good for cars. Do the AAMC cars articles on top of doing Jack Weston. By this point, you already know most of the information you need to know for the other sections, like the memorization and all the concepts you need to know. So the only thing you have to do is get used to how that information is presented on the exam so you can get as many questions right as possible and not make dumb mistakes that cause you to lose an extra point. I would say to try to take one AAMC full-length exam every week. When you do take the full-length exams, I recommend doing it in ideal exam conditions. It means you take all the sections in the span of 7 hours, do 1.5 hours per section, and then take breaks in between. Take the actual breaks that are provided, bring snacks with you during breaks, and take the exam in a quiet location where you know you won't be interrupted. For example, I took my practice exams at a local community college library. And this has twofold purposes. One is to show you where your weaknesses and strengths are when you're in an ideal exam setting. Like perhaps you struggle more with cars whenever you're like sitting down and like doing it as like the second section. And two is to increase your stamina to prepare you for the real thing. When I first sat down to take a full length exam, I was exhausted by just the first block. Like I wanted to just give up after Chem Phys. I had never taken a 7 hour long exam before in my life. The longest I had done before this was a 3 hour long AP language test in high school. I was nowhere near used to the length of the MCAT and what it required from me. Building up the stamina to take it is one of the most important adjustments you have to make before exam day. On my first practice exam, I was tired by section 1. On the second one, I only started to feel tired around the third section. Towards the end, I knew I could power through the entire thing. And these are all the tips I have for you to see a massive score improvement on the MCAT. If you implement some or all of these tips, you will see a top percentile score on your exam, guaranteed. If you need more individualized help or to be connected to a like-minded community of pre-med and medical students to help you keep accountable, please click the top link in the description. Otherwise, I bid you all farewell and I wish you the best of luck in your studies.